Record with WRAL News.
Thank you for joining us for this back-to-school edition of On the Record. I'm Lena Tillett. We are now counting down to the start of the school year with days, not weeks, 9 days away as of this broadcast. You don't need me to tell you that, of course. All you have to do is visit a big box store in our area. There's a buzz of excitement as families are stocking up on supplies. And parents should know there's a lot to consider this school year outside of those long supply lists. New safety plans, new bus routes, district efforts to overcome pandemic learning loss, just to name a few. And our panelists today know their school districts better than most and are here to help families get ready. Dr. Pascal Mubanga is the superintendent of Durham Public Schools. Dr. Anise Williams is the principal at Bug Magnet Elementary School and the most recent principal of the year for Wake County Public Schools. And Tamika Walker Kelly is a music teacher in Cumberland County Schools and president of the North Carolina Association of Educators. Thank you all for joining me today. Really looking forward to this conversation because, again, you know your district so well and things are changing so rapidly. So, Principal Williams, I want to begin with you because if you'll allow me to tout your accomplishments a bit, you are a four-time finalist for Principal of the Year. You've recently won the reigning champ. I called you off camera. So tell us, how do you start the school year strong?
I think it's by keeping the focus on what our priorities are, which number one is keeping every single student safe. So making sure we have procedures and structures in place to keep every child safe every day. And then right after that is cultivating academic growth. And so looking for the right people to be in the right positions and just ensure that we have everything ready to go on that first day because the children are coming.
What would you say the secret is? Obviously, you figured it out in your success. And I don't say that jokingly because, frankly, you know that there has to be some level of effort and enthusiasm. What would you say the right ingredients are to a successful year?
I think for me, it's narrowing the focus. There can be so many exciting things to try, to implement, to innovate. And I really keep the focus narrow at schools that I lead and ensure that everybody on the staff understands what our goals are so that we can make decisions because resources can be a challenge. And when resources are limited, we have to be able to figure out where we're going to place them. So if we all know what our vision is as a school and the focus is narrow, then people know how to set priorities.
Vision is so key in so many situations. I want to get to a question that nearly all parents have, though, and that's, are the buses going to show up? Will they be there on time? Wake County Schools had a huge announcement this week that I want to break down for parents. So all bus routes will be covered for the upcoming school year. That's great. However, it comes with a catch. More than 3,000 students will likely arrive after the morning bell, and that's because the district still needs about 24 drivers. So those routes are covered right now, but they are extended. Kids are going to be on buses, potentially a little bit longer. As a principal, how do you prepare your families for that?
Well, the district, I feel, has done a good job of communicating to families what we may expect, and we're expecting to find out tomorrow what those specific details look like for our schools, and so we will plan around that. As I mentioned, keeping students safe is the number one responsibility. So when I determine which students are going to be there early and how many of them will be arriving early, we'll have a plan for keeping them covered. And when we know which students might be arriving after the bell, then we're going to have to strategize. But it's something I think that coming out of a pandemic, we've learned how to be flexible. We know that plans change minute to minute if it's necessary. And so that's where we're working to set that priority on keeping students safe. And then for the students who are coming in late, figuring out how to regain and recoup any time that's lost from instruction. But we've shown that we're able to adapt, and I feel like we're going to be able to manage it again.
Well said. Dr. Mubanga, let's talk about Durham. The last time we talked with school officials in Durham about the bus situation, there were just about a handful of open positions. So it seems like you all are kind of on track. What would you say your reason is for that? How have you been able to retain bus drivers?
Thank you for that question, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. We are really excited when it comes to our bus drivers. I think pretty much every single bus has a bus driver. I think our success comes with not only the pay increase, because we're paying really well, about $18 an hour. That has been really increased for the last 3 years. We used to be somewhere around $15. On top of that, we really want to make sure that we're treating our bus drivers as professionals, and we're meeting with them on a regular basis, and there is even a group of them that they come to my office and listening to all their concerns. So we're working really well with them to make sure that DPS is home for them, and not only for compensation, but we really want to treat them as professionals. We've been really lucky with that. Yes, we're still hiring, we're still looking for more bus drivers so that we can reduce the time that students spending on the bus, and I think we're still in that recruitment season as well. So yes, we are really good at this point, but we're still looking for more bus drivers.
Is that concept of treating bus drivers like professionals, do you think that's a byproduct of the pandemic? Because we saw so many bus drivers leaving the profession during the pandemic, and now it seems that people are recognizing their value so much more because they don't have them. So was that as a result of the pandemic?
I think it was a wake-up call. It was a wake-up call. To be really transparent, it was a wake-up call. And we have to sit down around the table and say, what's going on? And even our teachers and our educators, they understand. Without having bus drivers on our campuses, regardless of how good your lessons can be, you're not going to have those babies so you can deliver those lessons. We sat around the table, start listening to them the same way we're listening to our educators, and we're making our adjustment accordingly.
I do want to bring in Ms. Walker-Kelly to bring in the teacher perspective, because in Cumberland County Schools, last time we checked, I think there were about 15 bus driver openings there, and they were concerned about how that might impact routes. So from the teacher perspective, how does that affect the classroom?
Well, first, I just want to say our bus drivers do a tremendous job in carrying our most precious cargo to and from school every day. And as an educator that works alongside with them, they do great work in ensuring that our kids get to school on time so that they're prepared and ready for instruction in the classroom. And they are the first face that they see to start their school day. And so those positive interactions really set students up for success when they come to a classroom like mine. And so we work in partnerships with our bus drivers and other support staff to really ensure that students have a great start to the day, and also that when they get ready to go home, that they also close the day on a positive note as well.
Has it been frustrating for teachers to not have that consistency with drivers and routes?
It is challenging because it does impact instruction and also attendance for our students at school. As we know, we've seen a rise in chronic absenteeism for students, and part of that is because we have such inconsistency with transportation, not because our bus drivers do not want to be available to drive the bus, is that we are in the middle of an educator shortage and support staff shortage. And so we need all hands on deck to ensure that we have professionals being able to transport our students to school every single day.
You mentioned, Principal Williams, that if students were to show up late, you all were going to prepare for how to make sure you were recouping any losses in terms of education time, or I'm sure also eating. Some students need to eat in the morning, and that might be impacted. So how do you all make that happen?
Well, we've tried different things because this is not the first time students have been late to school. We may see more than we've seen in the past, but for example, we have had a setup where students could get breakfast in the cafeteria when they enter and take it to the classroom so that they can go ahead and get involved in their education and eat while they're working. We also want to keep those classrooms clean. So typically we'll have, here's the area where students are able to eat and work at the same time. We also have a variety of tools that we use. So the teacher may not be starting the lesson at the moment the bell rings. She may have students working on an online platform or other kinds of things like that. So looking at how we can use the tools we have throughout the day and how we can rearrange them during the day so that each student can benefit from the maximum amount of time with the teacher.
It makes a lot of sense, though, that during the pandemic, so many new skills were formed and grown about how to adapt to very rapidly changing situations. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out this school year. Well, coming up, the days of just running in and out of your kids' school, those days are long over. We're going to look at new safety plans in place and why they're there. Welcome back. We are joined again by school district leaders in Wake, Durham, and Cumberland counties. Another big topic, of course, for the upcoming school year is student safety and various safety plans that are going in place. Superintendent Mubenga, I'm going to begin with you here because sadly we saw a tragedy at Hillside High School earlier this year where 2 students were shot outside of the school. One tragically died. So sad. And I wanted to say something here because, look, you have more than 31,000 students in your district. These incidents have impacted just a handful of students, but it does disproportionately affect Durham public school students because of the issue of gun violence in the community. So how do you prepare for these type of situations, and how are you working to keep students safe?
Thank you for that question. It's really very unfortunate what happened last year with our students. Those incidents really happened off campus. I always say this, our students, anytime they're on our campuses, they are safe. Incident that happen outside of campus, we are all responsible. So for that reason, I always call on all the leaders in the community. It takes the whole village to address those issues. But I'll say this, for next year, moving forward, we have a strong student services departments. We're making sure we have curriculum in place when it comes to social emotional learning. We've been implementing this for the past 3 years with elementary schools. This academic year, we're going to start that with our high school and middle school as well. So that's giving students tools how to deal with their emotions and their social beings as well. So I'm feeling really confident with all the things that we have in place to address the needs of our students post-pandemic is really crucial. On top of that, we have a great relationship with our sheriff department. We have an SRO on our campuses. As a matter of fact, we have a meeting tomorrow because based on our MOU, we have to meet with our school resource officers, with our principals along, so we can look at what is working well, what are the area of challenges, and what adjustment we can make. That meeting is going to happen tomorrow. I think we've been able to share this with some of our partners in the media as well. So having those crucial conversations with our law enforcement, it goes a long way. And we all know traditionally when it comes to students of color, their relationship with law enforcement can go negative. But we are trying to be proactive having those conversations so that we won't experience any of those bad experiences that's happening across the nation.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because, you know, in 2020, we had that summer of a racial reckoning where people were trying to limit the interactions between certainly young people and police officers because some of those interactions were not positive. It feels like that trend is long over. Now we're seeing more SROs in schools. So how do you kind of process that change, Ms. Walker-Kelly? And is that a good thing to have more officers in schools?
Well, as an educator and a parent, of course, we want our students to be safe when they come to school buildings. And many SROs, particularly at the elementary level, work really hard to build relationships with students inside of the schools so that they are a positive area where they can come and talk to them about any issues that they may experience. But it is a thing that we want to acknowledge is that we want to establish a difference between safety and security. We want our students to be safe at school, but we also want them to feel secure. And so we are continuing to evaluate our relationships of how we use SROs in schools because we want all of our students to feel safe, particularly our students of color.
Did you want to add to that, Dr. Mubenga?
I agree completely with Tamika. It's a partnership. I think traditionally it did not go well. That's why having all these adults around the table, having these crucial conversations, I think that's the right direction for all of us.
Principal Williams, Wake County has a brand new safety structure. There is going to be a background check for all visitors that come to schools in the district. We saw last school year, I should say, it felt like 1 week after another incident where we were hearing about weapons taken from students or adults coming onto school property. Do you think this is going to make students more secure, this new safety structure?
I think it will be a helpful resource, for me, a big part of keeping students safe at school and helping them to feel secure, as we mentioned earlier, is really about not only structures and procedures, but also about relationships. And so the school staff, we are the folks that are having that daily interaction with the children, with their families, and getting to know them. And so cultivating those relationships where we recognize people who are near our campuses, as well as relationships with the students so that they feel safe to let us know when something unusual may be going on. It's really about the staff and the students following our procedures, whatever we've put in place, but also having those relationships between the staff and the students and the families so that we can learn any information that we need to be able to head off any sorts of concerns. But we're excited about implementing the new program, especially because it will give us a much faster way to have information about the backgrounds of folks who are trying to come on the campus, because it's a balance. We don't want the parents to feel like they're outside of a locked prison and can't get in to be a part of the community their child is a part of, but we also want to make sure that we're keeping that community safe for everybody that's on the property.
And just so I'm clear, does this mean that every single time anyone comes into the school, they'll have to do this background check, or once they've had it once, then they're known in the school building?
Well, every time they come in, they will have to verify who they are.
Gotcha.
But once they've had the check, then it will just rely on the check they've already had.
You know, I noticed when you all each first started talking, you each said that student safety is a priority. And I wonder, is this what parents talk about most with you at this point? What's kind of their priority?
I think it really depends from child to child, because every family has what they are concerned about. But I would say that for the vast majority of parents, that rises right to the top of the list in terms of things that they bring forward. I think we have earned the trust of our community. So not every parent talks about it in every conversation. But every parent is concerned, particularly because we do see so many school incidents across our nation, and even beyond schools, right? It's not just a school issue. Violence is an American issue. And so any parent or any family member is always concerned about when they send a person that they love anywhere, whether that person is going to get home safely from that location. And it's more important for us because we have minors with us. And so the adults who are in the building have a much greater responsibility for helping keep everyone on campus safe.
Ms. Walker-Kelly, what's your understanding from the teacher perspective on the number of incidents with these guns found on campuses? Is there any kind of thinking of why? Is it more people are being searched? Like, why are we seeing so many weapons on campuses?
Well, I think it's a combination of issues, and one of the things that we know is that during the pandemic and even slightly before, many of our students were facing mental health challenges in their homes and experiencing it with each other. And so one of the things that we've continued to do is push for an increase in mental health resources for our students to be able to talk about how they feel, to act as a preventative measure to some increased security measures, because our students have gone through a lot. They've experienced trauma during this pandemic, and their educators have experienced the same type of trauma as well. And so we see our students acting out as a response, because all behavior is communicative. And so we continue to try to learn from our student behavior so that we can implement policies and procedures and also have resources available to help them so that we don't have an increase of incidents during the year.
Well, we're certainly hoping for a very safe and event-free school year in terms of violence. Many more questions with our panelists coming up after the break. Welcome back. We are back with our panelists talking about the upcoming school year, getting families excited and prepared for the year ahead. Principal Williams, here's something I'm wondering, based off of something that you just said about getting back into some kind of rhythm for these students. Are they getting back to some new normal post-pandemic? Does it feel more normal like before the pandemic, or is it just something altogether new?
It certainly feels much more normal than what we experienced during the early days of the pandemic. And I honestly feel like the children have made the transition a little bit more quickly than the adults. And so students have been excited to be back in school with other children. One of the big differences that I have noticed, depending upon the age of the children at the time that the pandemic started, we realized we had students last year who had already been in school more than 2 years, some of them without ever having a full classroom experience. There were students who spent 2 years learning from home because maybe their families chose to take advantage of virtual academy as long as it was offered. And so having students who are as old as second grade but have never been in a classroom with a large group of students, it was just a time for us to be able to differentiate even more, particularly when it comes to the social emotional learning, because those are skills that children learn. Maybe they're not right there at the top of the curriculum, but how to share, how to collaborate, how to take turns. That was one of the things that we noticed. But again, in the environment, children were able to adapt quickly.
Okay, so one of the biggest complaints we heard from people who were upset about school closures was that students would be so far back in terms of their ability to socialize that they wouldn't be able to catch up. Are you seeing that, or are they basically adjusting?
Our students are doing a great job adjusting to the changes post-pandemic, and they've looked into new ways to socialize with each other, both in person and online, and they've created their own sense of community amongst themselves. And so one of the things that we do notice, of course, is when online activity spills over into the classroom, and so we try to make sure as educators that we create boundaries and procedures of how we interact with each other, but also teaching our students about good digital citizenship, which is a skill that was highly needed during the pandemic and continues to be one that we see throughout our classroom experience.
Can you teach adults next, please? I think everybody needs to learn that.
Absolutely.
Superintendent Mubanga, those pandemic relief funds are running out. We saw some really unique and innovative investments in our local schools as a result of those funds. So what did you see worked that you want to see continue?
That's a good question. We're very fortunate to have those funds. That was a really big relief for us. For us in Durham Public School, we're able to add over 100 teaching positions, as well as some behavior coaches in our schools. And that has been really positive. At this point, we're not going to be able to give a clear assessment whether or not there were really great resources to add. But as far as students learning, I think those additional positions were really helpful. And I'm really pleased that we are continuing with that. I think the funds is going to sunset somewhere around September, and we still have another year to go with that. That has been really a great investment. We also been able to try to address some of our operation needs, HVAC and things of that nature.
Right.
We put a lot of $1 million to invest in those capacities so that our students will feel safe. And we also did a great job of equipping all our campuses with outdoor learning. This is something that we're going to benefit even post-pandemic. Our students can go outside, be able to interact and be able to learn. So we've been able to put a lot of initiative in place with those funds. But when it comes to really being able to pull those metrics to know the effectiveness of all those, I think you still have a long way to go.
15 seconds for each of you. What would your advice be to parents as they're getting their kids ready?
I say be prepared to communicate, and the teachers and staff should be reaching out to you, but you reach out as well. If you have questions, if you have things that are important for us to know about your child, let us know.
I would encourage our parents to provide grace and be flexible with all of the changes happening with school districts this year. There are a lot of new legislations in place. There are a lot of changes on the district level, and so to offer grace and be flexible.
Our parents, please get engaged, get involved. Our students really need us. It takes teachers, it takes good administrators, it takes parents to make sure that we're moving our students in the right direction.
Well, we certainly wish you all the best of luck. We are so grateful for the hard work that you do for our children in our community. Thank you all for joining me. And WRAL is your home for back to school coverage over the next few weeks. Expect to see several reports from 5 on Your Side and WRAL Investigates as students head back to class. You can search Back to School for the latest information. Have a great evening.